He says, I have a dilemma and I'm not sure which is the best strategy. Because of my work and family commitments, I have to sometimes do my workouts just before bedtime. You talked a lot about recovery, nutrition, and its importance, but I've also read that eating just before bedtime is not the most healthy time to eat. These are, in his mind, mutually exclusive things. To eat or not to eat, that is the question. How would you choose? So this is, man, there are a lot of things that we may sound like a broken record on a number of different things that we'll say here, but so this is like this, we kind of like force paradoxes upon ourselves, or paradoxes, whatever it may be. Speak is hard today, but we force these upon ourselves and we basically say like, okay, so I have to do this or I have to do this. And there's no other question. Like a great example of this is like, I have to eat before my workout or I have to not eat before my workout. And that's it. But then when we tell people, no, like you can eat during your workout and that can help, or you can add in plenty of other things around that. So this is an example, Peter, if I think that you don't have to face such dire, polarized black or white circumstances that you're saying if to eat or not to eat, what do I do? But answering this question hopefully can be informative for people. Pete, we talked about context for this because Pete being a person who trains and that sort of stuff, we have to separate that from the typical like advice on eating late at night, right?
Yeah, and nutrition advice is a crazy thing because it's applicable to everybody. So when they're writing articles or creating something that grabs your attention, they want you to think about this thing that is, and it affects everybody. So if you just have a headline that says "Do not eat late at night," period, and there are health benefits to not eating late at night, but it's a standalone like common practice that would benefit a majority of people. But I think one of the things is Peter probably isn't the majority of people. If you're a training athlete, if you're worried, if you're thinking actively about your fueling strategy for your workouts during the day, I would say you're a different type of athlete.
Yeah,
just
you're not
no
a
matter
normal
what.
person, right?
Yes. So it's really hard to take face value for nutrition tips for everybody and make them directly applicable to you. But what you can do is you can kind of frame yourself as what is the most important thing for you, and then decide how the tips that you're reading kind of bounce off of that or stick to that. And so I think this was one where, John, I think you said it really well. Like fueling isn't based around 3 square meals a day, which makes a lot of sense if you kind of use if your training is your most important thing that day, use that as the anchor point for your fueling strategy throughout the day. Then it's not whether it's 8 a.m. or midnight. It's I have a workout that I want to be successful at, and I'm going to eat accordingly with the meals before that and fuel properly during it and recover after it based on the workout, which is the most important thing of my day. And it doesn't matter what time the clock says. It matters that I felt good. I recovered well after the workout and I went to sleep, right? Like those are the things that matter the most. It doesn't matter if it's 8:15 when you eat breakfast, much less so than
Yeah.
nailing your workout. So I think that's the crux of this is make sure that what you're reading is applicable to you, and make sure that the thing that you're like focusing on is actually valuable and will make in turn be productive to whatever you're trying to accomplish.
So what that looks like from a practical manner is you don't have to eat breakfast at 8 a.m., lunch at noon, dinner at 6 p.m., and then you have to fit in everything else around that. Instead, you look at your nutrition as it builds toward that workout. And then around that workout, throughout that workout, and after that workout, you have a nutrition plan to be able to fuel that workout. So instead of looking at as 3 square meals, now I've got to train and somehow I've got to figure out all of this stuff. Ivy, maybe we can talk a bit about like the PM, evening time not being the best time to eat.
Yeah. So I think that the context of that kind of broad nutritional advice is important to consider for athletes. Like, why is Peter worried about this? Like, worried about if you eat too much, not being able to like get restful sleep? Or is it like a worried about gaining weight thing? Like, there are a lot of, I don't know what exactly they're considering, but like if you just did a really hard workout later at night, like you're not going to go right to sleep anyways. Like if you're worried about like a big heavy meal, like sitting in your gut and keeping you from falling asleep, like if you just did a hard workout, like you're not going to go to sleep like right away anyways. Yeah. And I mean, on the other side of it, I feel like a common question we get a lot is about like, I have a really early workout. Like, how do I eat a big meal in the morning? Like, all of these Pete nailed it. The broad nutritional advice like has to be placed within context of like you as an athlete and like really specific to cycling.
So much of this can be solved by fueling your workouts during and then like a recovery drink thereafter. And you can just solve so much from it. But we need to make like a very clear distinction. Like you are not the person that's getting up at midnight and then going down to the fridge and making just like a really huge, like unhealthy, like, destroying a whole bag of potato chips, right? Like midnight snackers. That's different than you just doing your workout and then having to refuel yourself. That's profoundly different in this case. So separate your case from that. And then once again, take the perspective of just fueling your work, not trying to fit something in and figure out the logistics of 3 square meals and how those fit. Nate, what say you?
Yeah. So do have science back this up. Let's question the premise of eating late at night, of it being unhealthy. There is, it's changed throughout the years of what people think. I think right now you probably hear it mostly from like the intermittent fasting crowd, and that is talking about mechanisms. But when they look at outcomes, you're fine eating late at night. There's also research saying that if you eat this is different than what we used to think, and I think we've even said this in the podcast, but if you eat a high glycemic meal right before bed, you actually sleep better, which is also crazy too. And you know what it's really good after training? A high glycemic meal, right? During that period for like recovery. You're going to be fine, Peter. You can eat late at night and you're going to be good. I would just say individually, if you find that if I eat this, it's harder to go to sleep or something like that, but I have no problems with this stuff, but I know some people do, then don't eat that. Try something else. But I wouldn't have the stress around it, and you're going to be great, and you're not going to just wake up with all this fat on your body. I think that's the worry of people think like if I eat at night, I'm going to wake up with all this fat on my body. It's not true. A bunch of this is anecdotal now, but lots of pro athletes who are extremely thin, they eat a huge carbohydrate meal right before they go to bed. Keegan being one of them. He does cereal every night to refuel, right? And they want to get glycogen back in. They have early morning workouts, as Ivy said. You can have a very, very lean body. And if you look at like actual outcome research, there's no different. What's really interesting too is they took, there used to be in weight training about protein timing, right? And they used to be like, you need to have 6 meals a day, protein every time, space this stuff out. And what they did then is there's also now intermittent fasting group who says that, it's better to do it this way. And what they've done research on is to see what if you have all your protein during this like feeding window, like 4 to 6 hours, or if you spread it out over the day. And what they found is there was no difference. It was the same either way. Intermittent fasting can be a great way to lose weight for those who struggle with portion control and eating in a caloric deficit, because you can only eat so much at a certain time. But apparently now, based on the outcome research that we know, there's nothing magical about having that fast other than you're not eating. And I know people will argue that, and Ivy can answer all those questions on the forum for us. That's what I sent it to John. But they're not saying that there couldn't be something, right? We're just not, as far as I'm aware of the research, there's mechanisms that they think happen. But if you look at outcomes like that, where they take 2 groups and they control it really well, there's not a significant difference between those 2 things. And I just want to make sure I say this very clearly, because people will message me on Instagram too. I understand that the mechanisms, like people say, oh, if you do this, you're burning fat all day and therefore your body comp's going to be better. You got to just prove it with like an actual study, right? Of saying one group's eating this way, other group's eating this way. And then we get a more likely than chance, statistically different outcome for the group that was intermittent fasting. Because that's what I think Peter's kind of getting that into his head. It's cool, Peter, just eat.
Yeah, defining mechanics of mechanistic differences about how the body performs in one way or another. That part's more or less, I say easy, but that's more common. Actually getting to the outcome side of things from that mechanism is really hard. And there are a lot of companies that build products around mechanisms, but then they can't ever prove the outcome, right? So the mechanism makes sense, but it's really hard.
Every fad diet over the last 30 years has always been about mechanism. And they always have some kind of, because that's how they sell it. There's a proof of a little mechanism inside of it. And then everyone thinks it's that thing. And then there's a new one and there's a new mechanism. And you know what? There's a couple diets that stay, lots of vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, healthy fats. That's like
Not
the
too
one
much.
that stays, and not too much, right? Yeah. And it's hard to, if you eat those things, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, lean protein and healthy fats, it's really hard to eat too much. I mean, not really hard, but it's harder than if you're eating Popeyes or some other kind of meal. Anyways,
it
off my
100% is.
soapbox. This is
Yeah, that triggered you. Whoa, you okay?
I triggered some people.
Yeah,
I
you
know
just
there's
triggered a lot of people.
Please, where should they put it? Put it on your favorite nutrition forum. No, we can do it in our forum. It's good.
For sure. So this and Peter, something else that I've noticed, a lot of athletes will mistake an interrupted nights of sleep or just a hard time falling asleep with the effort that you did. So like post crit, our weekly like summertime crit series,
It's the worst.
the A group finishes around like 8 o'clock basically is when we
8:30,
finish.
o'clock.
Right. Yeah. And then I go home and I try to sleep after just completely destroying myself. My legs feel like individual campfires, just bonfires. Like I can't go to sleep. Hot legs. I'm uncomfortable. My mind is totally revved up from the race. And sometimes you can have a really hard workout that also kind of puts you in a similar headspace, and it's hard to wind down from that. So there's a lot of the time we'll hear that and then we'll just associate it with the common advice of, well, it's hard to sleep on a full stomach or after eating, and that's why you shouldn't eat before bed. And that's like a common, I should say, misattribution that you could make with that. So make sure that you're understanding all the different variables that could be contributing to that if you are indeed getting to the point where you have trouble sleeping. But I usually train in the evenings. Now, not perhaps when you're doing it in this case, Peter, but I usually train sometime around 5 to 7 p.m. or 4 to 6 p.m., somewhere around there. And when I do that, I have to afterward eat quite a lot still, because if I eat all the way through the day and I'm eating whole grains, vegetables, all that stuff, it's tough to be able to eat enough to be able to just offset the caloric deficit beforehand. So, but I do that. I eat through my workout, and then thereafter, I don't have to eat this gigantic meal because I've been building throughout the day toward this workout. And then I fueled during the workout and I had a recovery drink. So then it's just a reasonable thing that I have thereafter. So if people fueled their workouts I should say before, with good nutrition, during and after, it's suddenly it just removes so many problems with timing, with caloric balances, which we're going to get into more later. But it just makes a huge difference when you really try to fuel adequately during and after in particular.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.
If you think I have better hair than Jonathan, give it a thumbs up. If not, leave a comment.
My hair is better than his.